In honor of the veterans who have served our country, both past and present, First National Bank proudly sponsors Veterans of the Valley. Since 1862, First National has provided local decision-making and accessibility, as well as banking products and services to Brazos Valley citizens. First National Bank, first, always.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on another edition of Veterans of the Valley. Little did he know that when he went out horseback riding on that sunny Sunday morning in the Trinity River bottom with an Aggie buddy in 1941, that when he returned, the U.S. would be at war with Japan. Our guest today says he made a big circle. That's how he describes the events from his junior year at Texas A&M in 1941 until his return to the area that he describes as the best place I've ever lived, and began his teaching career in 1975 at Texas A&M, with stops in Australia and New Guinea along the way. Sit back with me and visit with this veteran of the Valley, Frank Litterst, Jr., 85 years young and sharp as a tack. Frank, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate it.
My privilege. Thank you very much. And I just want to say first that if you thought you were getting an Audie Murphy, now you're mistaken, because I was no hero.
All of the veterans in our eyes are heroes in some way, shape, or form. If you served, you're definitely a hero in the eyes of everyone around here.
Thank you, sir.
Well, take us back to that Sunday that you went out horseback riding and you came back, and basically your world was turned upside down.
Well, I was in the Corps. I was the first sergeant at that time in my battery, and thought I was important. And so when I came out there and found we were at war, well, we rushed back over, and thought we'd be leaving the next week or so. But of course we weren't, and we stayed through the next year, and our senior year was changed from the fall of 42 to the spring of 43 as normal, and we had to go through the summer of 42 and the fall of 42, and we got out Christmas time so that we'd get into the service early, and that's the way we ended. We got real serious about the military end of it, and just about forgot everything else but what was coming off in the war, and it was a big deal to us, and it was a big deal to everybody.
Right. Now your class of 43 basically had quite a distinction from all the other classes of A&M. Basically, you were all taken into the military all at once in mass, so to speak.
Yes, sir. A lot of us hung around here after the senior semester in the fall of 42. And we all accumulated around here in January of 43, and I think it was January 23rd. I got on a train or a bus or something, and we went to our respective, whatever we were, artillery, infantry, and so forth. I went to Camp Davis, North Carolina for anti-aircraft artillery, OCS, for 13 weeks, and then we got commissioned at the end of that period, which was May 6th for me.
Okay, and just a couple of days later, after May 6th?
May 6th, 43, I got commissioned. May the 8th, I got married, and we had a wonderful marriage, 59 years, and lost her. She passed away in 2002, this recently, and we got married, had a short honeymoon, and part of it was going to Galveston and Blackout, and then the other part of it we just had some days left. Came back up here and stayed in the old hotel down in Bryan, and came back here and saw some of the guys that hadn't left, and then we headed for Camp Stewart, Georgia, and stayed there through the summer until August 7th, then went overseas.
Now, I understand you were in the Army, but you actually had a fervent love for planes. You really wanted to be in the Air Corps.
I wanted to be a flyboy, a pilot. It looked so glamorous. And when I got to Georgia and had the bad luck of being in a riot there at the base, that was pretty bad. And and after I got thinking about it a while, I said, I think I'll see if I can't get up in the air. And I went over, took an Air Corps physical and passed it, and then got back to my battalion headquarters, and they said, it's too late, you can't, we're frozen, we got to go overseas. So after about 2.5 months there, three, we left and headed overseas.
Tell us about that trip. Basically, I believe you left out of Sacramento, California, or somewhere around there?
Well, yeah, we took a train from Georgia to Camp Stoneman, California, which was on the Sacramento River, I think. And you would prepare yourself there to go overseas. They issued you your ordnance, rifles, everything, and got you in the right frame of mind, supposedly. Aggie friend of mine and I made a mistake of leaving that base and visiting a friend of mine, an Aggie Class 42, Maury Curtis, over in the Marine pre-flight. And when we got back, why, we were almost missed the boat because they were all lined up in their battle dress and ready to leave, go down. And what you do is march down to a riverboat, get on it on the river, and then go down it to Oakland. And luckily somebody packed our stuff for us, and I jumped into my old clothes real quick, and we went down the river, and by that time it was dark, and we climbed aboard a Dutch freighter that was supposed to carry us overseas in that evening, and it was, of course, exciting to us. We had no idea where we were going to go, and next morning we sailed out onto the Golden Gate Bridge and headed west.
It was a long trip, wasn't it?
It was it was real long. I went over a little bit earlier than a lot of my classmates, and submarines were bad. We had a blimp that went out over us and could spot them, so far out, and then he turned around and left us, and we picked up a destroyer escort, and we went way down below Christmas Island and then over towards all the New Zealand, Australia area, and it took about 27, 28 days. We zigzagged the whole way to keep getting hit by torpedoes, and I remember it was especially bad because there was no fresh water to bathe in. We had to bathe in salt water, and that got pretty raw after a while, And
did you run into any storms along the way?
Not that time, no. My next trip I did on a boat when I went to New Guinea, but not the Australian trip, yeah. Australian trip, we landed in Brisbane, Australia, which was a very nice place.
Tell us a little bit about your stay in Australia. You weren't there that long, really, were you?
Well, we stayed in Brisbane about 2-3 weeks, bivouacked in a racetrack, Ascot Downs, and everybody over in Australia had a racehorse at that time. It seemed like we have a dog or a pet. They were fanatics about it. Anyway, we took over their racetrack, and they put us on a little train, little narrow gauge thing, and no sides, cinders blowing in and everything. We rode 800 miles north to Townsville, Australia, and we bivouacked out in the boondocks outside of Townsville and stayed there about maybe 3 months, and didn't have a bad time there. And we walked miles and miles and miles, training and so forth, just getting toughed up for going up to New Guinea. And that's where I had that accident that I mentioned to you. We had a good baseball team. You want me to tell you about that?
Oh, absolutely.
We had a good officers baseball team, and we beat everybody. And I had a boxing team that was good too. And I got hit by an inside curveball in my left elbow here, and it looked just like a horse's hock. It just got real big, a hematoma. So they took me to the hospital in Townsville, which was a bunch of houses they confiscated from people, and each house was a ward. Well, we had an officer's ward, and I was laying out in the front porch, and this big guy comes down the street with a great big hat on, Western hat, and good-looking girls with him. He got closer, we could see little John Wayne.
Oh.
And he wasn't going to come see us because we were officers. He just wanted to hang with the enlisted men. So we started moaning and groaning and carrying on up there. And he started laughing, and he came up there and visited with us, put his old hat on my head and everything. He was a wonderful man. I wish we had more like him.
Did he ask you anything about your war wound, so to speak?
Oh, I covered it. I told him I was machine gunned or something, hit by a baseball.
What after you were in? Also, I understand the Australians also had some pretty good, like 14%
Australia
beer.
was a nice country. I took another Air Corps physical there, and they said I couldn't go home in grade and take flight training. Maybe they were getting enough pilots. I don't know. It was kind of expensive to take me from there all the way back to flight training. So I was turned down again, and it probably was a good, maybe saved my life. But eventually they got my battalion. We were a unattached battalion of anti-aircraft artillery weapons, and they had us load a Liberty ship up with 500-pound bombs to go up to New Guinea to Port Moresby. After we loaded it, they said, well, you get your stuff together and get on the ship. You're going to ride on top of these bombs up there, and which we did, about 800 of us. And then about midway to Guinea, while we hit a tornado,
Typhoon.
what we call a hurricane,
Right.
a typhoon, and it was an awful storm. And I was sleeping on the deck on a cot. That old cot would hit one railing and come back and hit the side of the ship, and it was a rough night. And my blanket blew overseas, and over the board rather, and I got all soaking wet. And I came in, got in bed with Aggie and Earl Winchy, and
That's the Winchy
wet.
family from Spring, Texas.
He didn't.
if I
Yeah, he
remember
was from
correctly.
Spring. He didn't like it much. Earl passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a dandy. He put up with me the next day. Eventually, we got to Milne Bay, New Guinea. Was my first stop up there. Stayed there a good while. Set of our automatic weapons, our 40 millimeters, around the harbor there, and we didn't have much to do because the 5th Air Force had gotten the Japanese pretty subdued as far as air raids and so forth.
So we pretty much had air superiority at that
we,
time.
We had it, yeah. That was a great Air Force, the 5th Air Force, and they invented everything, skip bombing, and took planes and made additions to them, and it was a great outfit, and they got the job done, and we didn't have much to do except. I don't know. Well, they used to. He thought I was Artie Murphy, I guess. He used to send me and about a dozen men up in the mountains there, the Owen Stanley Mountain Range, which was behind our gun emplacements. It'd take 2 days to go up, and we'd stay up there in jungle hammocks and supposedly looking for stray Japanese that had been left there after the Battle of Buno Mission, which was up above us. And
Did you ever encounter anything?
They were hungry, and I just thank the Lord to this day we didn't run into any of them. I'd have beat them all down that mountainside.
So you basically came back all the time
I'd have been a real
empty-handed.
hero. And about my 3rd mission up there, I fell and got hurt. I fell down the mountain, and but I got back down and eventually started decided I wanted to get closer to the ground action, and transferred to a 155 millimeter artillery outfit, combination of seacoast and field artillery, up above Finchhaven, New Guinea, on the coast.
And those are the big guns, the 155
yeah, big ones.
millimeter.
They
They're,
were about
I think long toms or something.
long toms, yes sir. The projectile weighed about 90 pounds, and we were across from New Britain, and we hung out up there, and just more New Guinea. There wasn't much change anywhere. It was a place that was uninhabited, and a lot of the people up in the mountains way up in there were still eating each other, and no cities, no towns, no nothing. And it was a strange vacation, and the Australians came up there. The Australian 7th Division was one of them that had come home from Africa, and they sent them up there, and they were just wonderful. They could fight like all get out, and they handled the groundwork real well, where we were pretty safe. Mm-hmm. You get long toms, you can get way back away from somebody and shoot
You
at
can reach way out there, can't you?
Don't know. Yeah, all it does is hurt your ears.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't depend on us too much, because I remember one day we were firing at a towed target for practice out in the water, and that ship followed, and we got close to that ship. He cut target loose and headed for home. That was Earl Winchy back there telling me what to set in the guns. You know? Yeah. And anyway, it was pretty routine up there after that. I think they decided I need to come home and get my knee operated on my left knee from my fall, and then I got dengue fever.
Well, but before you go to that, we've got some pictures that you supplied us. Let's let them load the pictures up, and we'll look up here at the monitor, and you can kind of just give us a quick little synopsis of each picture. There's the first one.
Those pictures were all in Milne Bay, New Guinea. We were right on the water, and our gun positions were too. And fellow on the left's name was Moon, and the second was Oscar Steinberg and myself, and I can't remember that man on the right. Old Oscar was from Los Angeles, a real nice fellow, and he couldn't swim. And one day he stepped off into a hole out there in Milne Bay. He was trying to enjoy the water, and he went out of sight, and I had to go pull him out in the ocean. And then I pulled another guy out too, was trying to swim home. He had gone out of his head. And
tell us a little bit about this picture.
This picture is that's at that Camp Stone. We're getting ready to go get in the riverboat, and that's me on the right, I think.
On the far right, with that helmet cocked that certain way there.
Sir?
With the helmet, with that.
The helmet cocked. Yeah, I thought I was something else, you know. And so I just barely made the ship, and the guy in the middle had packed my stuff. Names I can't remember because that was a long time ago, and that's me in New Guinea. Kind of a pensive mood, wishing I was back home to see my bride. I had a skin place on my nose I used to try to box a lot, and I had my head pretty skinned up there in that picture.
But you had a good boxing team too, I understand.
Yeah, great. And that's Captain Moon and myself outside our tent.
So here we're still in Milne Bay.
Rained every day there, 140-something inches a year, and everything mildewed was nasty. But really, compared to lots of kids, that I didn't have it bad at all. I traded cigarettes for that grass skirt, and she went off in a cloud of smoke and no skirt on, you know. But they were happy, and I brought that thing home. I don't know where it is now, but I'm gonna find it and wear it Halloween. Yeah, I went from 160 to 130, and our food wasn't too good. The guy on the right's named McAtee, real close friend of mine, and he is a dentist up in Wichita, Kansas now.
Okay.
He's one of the few living still, and this was at Officers Candidate School the last day when we got commissioned, and we were actually sitting inspecting that fella.
So this picture is probably at Camp Stewart, Georgia.
That fellow was a Yankee. No, that was at Camp Davis.
That was at Camp Davis?
At Officers Candidate School there. And the one on the left is named Jim Beard. He was raised here in Bryan. He's dead, deceased. The one behind him is Cecil Carlisle on the back from Alice, Texas. He's deceased this past year, and that's Cecil inspecting me there. We were pretty GI, as you can see. We took it seriously.
That's a pretty serious picture, yeah.
I never took anything very seriously. But those were the days, yeah.
Now, that's a great-looking shot.
That's when I was cleaned up.
That's a clean-cut looking, absolutely.
I cleaned up pretty good,
You cleaned up good, as they say, absolutely.
Yeah, I just got those bars. I wanted to show off a little bit, so they took my picture somewhere. And
Now, explain this picture.
this
I
one
really
is,
like this picture.
we looked like an awful bunch of rogues.
First, you may want to tell where this is at.
I will. That's on the outside of Hart Hall on the campus here, right near Military Walk. And the guy in the white uniform is Ensign George Gay. He was the only survivor of Torpedo Squadron 8 in the Battle of Midway. He got shot in the arm. His plane was shot down. His gunner behind him got killed. He floated in the water and saw the whole battle nearly there. And he came back to A&M and made a big talk down in Kyle Field. He and Colonel Hilger, who was second commander of the raid on Tokyo, Doolittle raid. All those guys in the picture were my seniors. I was a battery commander, and I had a old Western hat on there, third from the left, and all those fellows there are dead, but me. Gay's dead too. He became president of American Airlines. I know Eastern Airlines.
Right. Okay.
And I'm all gone there. In other words, they're all wiped out in there. It's getting lonesome.
Those are some great pictures. So let's get back to the part where you had hurt your knee up in the mountains in the beginning.
Yeah, I tore it up pretty good, and they came up.
But you more or less went about your business for what, almost 2 years with
but,
with
yeah,
a bum knee?
about a year and a half I stood around, tried to get along on it. It got fevered and big, and so they put me on a hospital ship, which I don't remember getting on, but it's sea snipe. About middle of the trip home, I kind of remember a little bit. For some reason, it was packed. It took 17 days. We landed at docks there at Los Angeles, nighttime, and some of those kids had been overseas 4 years, and they were just punch drunk. They wanted to get home so bad, and we looked at those lights of the city, and all of a sudden the lights on the pier came on, and there was a huge orchestra like Benny Goodman or some of those old bands. And Dinah Shore was there, and she started singing to us, and I cried like a baby. I remember she started singing "I'll Walk Alone." I was ready to get off, and they made us stay till the next day and took us into town on buses to near Hollywood to Birmingham General Hospital, and gave us fried chicken, lettuce and tomatoes and milk. That's what we hadn't had in the years.
So that was probably the first real good home cooking
meal
you've had.
Very first meal, and then we got on a train, went further up to Modesto to Hammond General Hospital, and I stayed there a while till I was discharged.
Now, I understand, was it there that you ran into O.D. Butler?
O.D. Butler and
you have a
Jake,
nice little story
Jake Webster.
of what a small world this is.
Well, this is a fantastic coincidence. I wrote a lot of Aggies when I was overseas, and one of them was Jake Webster from Sweetwater. Jake's still alive, and he was in Armored Division in Patton's Army in Europe, and we wrote, and he said, I've gotten shot, and I'm going to come home. I wrote him back. I said, I've got hurt my knee, and I'm going to go home and get it operated on. I said, wouldn't it be great if we got put in the same hospital?
Yeah, what was the likelihood of that happening?
Well, I walked in that plane, limped into it, and old O.D. Butler was sitting there, and I said, O.D., you have any idea where my bunk would be? He said, yeah, you're right over there next to Jake Webster. I could almost passed out. We'd come a long way and got there together.
That's got to be karma somewhere along the way to get everybody back together.
The length of life for a time of Patton's lieutenant platoon commanders was about 2 weeks. They either got wounded or killed. He got his quick. And so that's the beginning then.
So after you basically went through your hospital, you got your knee taken care of, and you basically ended up back, like we said at the beginning of the show, you more or less made a full circle. You got back here to College Station.
I finished school here, and I took some graduate work in poultry, took animal science, and was teaching poultry labs as a graduate assistant, and these old GIs who I was teaching, and they were always asleep or drunk, or they were kind of unruly in class. It was hot, no air conditioning those days. And I told my wife, I said, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I said, let's go to ranching someplace. And so we moved from there to a little town of Barker, Texas, between Houston and Katy. Stayed there, didn't have any money, tried to get started ranching, and then I moved to Alice, Texas, to work for a feed company. And I covered all of South Texas, every backyard in Texas. And one day, Mr. Herman Heap called me from Butte, Texas. He was a great Aggie and benefactor, and he said, you want to come up here, I'll rent you a house and lease you 2 pastures. I was up there in a week, and my wife and had one little child in. And we got up there and started out ranching with lots of money. I had a war bond and $400 I borrowed from somebody. And started the ranching business, and we got pretty good at it, did pretty good in it. And old man Heap was very generous and kind. If you were an Aggie and loved A&M like I did,
right.
Well, he loved you, and he was most helpful to me. And we got larger in the business, and eventually I leased a ranch at Center, Texas. It was pretty good size, and then ran 2 in Louisiana for some Houston people.
Frank, we're running out of time.
Well, I was too far away, so I moved to College Station, get in the middle, and it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me and my kids and my wife.
Real quick before we run out of time, tell us about your kids.
About the students?
Well, no, more about your family. You've got.
You don't want to know about the class?
We're running out. We're going to have to get you back and cover the students on the second show.
All that A-B stuff. Well, my family is, I have 2 boys and a daughter. The daughter lives here, and both boys live in Georgetown, Texas. And they all, A&M, my son-in-law's an Aggie. He played football here when they whipped Bryant in the Cotton Bowl, and I'm proud of all of them. He was in the Air Force, and got 2 sons in the Air Force. One flew over here yesterday in a B-52 bomber. Wow. And another one just starting training. So we do our best to serve our country and A&M, and they all love A&M. There's nothing like it. It was a home to me. It still is.
Well, we're out of time, but I would like to thank you very much for being here, and we're definitely going to have you back just so we can hear the story of your unique grading system that really didn't catch quite on. But thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
You know, Frank Litterst Jr. was raised on a small farm between Katy and Houston, Texas. He was a Ross volunteer, the captain of the battery at Texas A&M in 1943. He served his country proudly and without reservation. Says he'd do it again, and by gosh, I think he would, even when he's 85 years old. We at Veterans of the Valley salute Frank Litterst Jr. Until next time, goodbye.